And we want to make sure that you're getting all the information that you can. So as I said before, this is the third part in this session, and throughout the time we've talked a lot about the different aspects of RTI and programming, and and focus mainly on that single room solution. And the one thing I want to make sure that is clear to everybody in regards to this programming atmosphere that we're talking about, and I mentioned this at the beginning of the training initially, was that this is the foundational part. When it comes to Integration Designer, you have the flexibility and the capability with this software, as well as the product line, to utilize it in any sort of installation or project that you're working on, regardless of a vertical that you're working in, such as hospitality or commercial or residential. When we're training on software, it's not always about the products that we're utilizing from third parties like TVs and receivers and all that. It's about the foundation of the knowledge in regards to how to get them set up that plays into all the other aspects of the job, right? And making sure that whether it's a commercial job or a residential job or hospitality or even higher ed, it's all based on the foundational knowledge that you're gaining from this single room, even if it's in a residential atmosphere. So please keep that in mind as we're going through today. And, if you are starting to dive into some larger projects with Integration Designer 11, please reach out to your sales engineers. Reach out to Clive in EMEA, or reach out to Vincent or two in the US, or Nick in the US, or Luke in APAC and Australia and New Zealand region. Let us help you with this, because I know it's a new software, and I know we offer a lot of training in regards to it online or in classes such as this, but I know there's a need to address specific things in specific installations. So your sales engineers are really well versed in this topic, and we want to be able to assist you in all these fashions and help you grow those clients year after year, project after project, and see it expand exponentially. And that directly affects your revenue stream too. And we want to make sure that you're capitalizing on all of that and not spinning your wheels and wasting valuable labor time. So please keep that in mind as we go through. Let's do a quick review of today, of what we did yesterday. So far, the last 2 days, we've built the foundation of the project. We talked about adding devices in. We talked about building that project. We talked about building rooms, adding sources, what sources meant in terms of not just individual devices, but what they are capable of in a variety of fashions, whether they're placed in a specific room or in the global area. We talked about how to, when you're identifying and planning out a project within Integration Designer, you want to make sure that you're building it based on, like you would do a walkthrough with a walkthrough on your own or with a client, and noting what's the room, what are the devices in the room, what's going to happen in this room, what is the client expectations, does there need to be customization to this, if this is a dedicated home theater room, as you're walking through the home, would it be advantageous for you to add a little customizational zing into it and be able to put something like Nelson Theater as the title of on the title screen of the keypad or the remote? Little things like that go a long way, and you can do all of those fantastic things within Integration Designer. And as you're building the projects, keeping in mind that it's a area-based, room-based structured programming environment will help you either in the transition from Integration Designer 9 to 11, or even if you're brand new, and keeping that in mind. We talked about, when we add those devices and the importance of, and the sources in and the controllers in, the importance of taking your time with the configurations, reading the information in regards to any drivers that you're using, having knowledge of the device you're trying to control before you actually try to control it is vital to making sure that this works properly. And then yesterday we talked about building up those activities and what those look like, and kind of how they play into what the client is expecting to happen in said room with the controller, and how it's important to identify the activity as being what the client wants to do. Watching a movie, watching TV, plugging in their computer, whatever the case may be, activating smart boards, whatever the activity might be, and what will go into that activity. And we talked about the macro sequence and where it looks like and how it builds into System Designer, so that you can, so that you have an idea of how System Designer will navigate through those macros and actually speed through them a lot faster, plus making sure that the same command isn't issued twice if it's not necessary. And we talked about tags and auto programming and how beneficial tags are as labels for specific buttons. Keep in mind, just a quick refresher, that tags are the label on the container, right? And that container can, in Integration Designer, can contain anything from a command to a page link to a full-blown, 20-step macro sequence to feedback options to all sorts of things. And that label can then be used in multiple areas on multiple devices and make those changes quickly if necessary. So it's a very, very powerful tool that we've incorporated into here. And the next step in this process, and as we mentioned yesterday, we really hadn't even talked about the user interface until we got to tags. Almost the last thing that we talked about was the user interface, and we started getting into that a little bit. And what I want to do today is dive into it a little bit more and talk about the design and the functionality of it and things that you need to check on and understand. And that incorporates things like layers and what happens when we need to add additional controllers. Is there any additional things that we need to do as on the user interface side of things, and some different ways to kind of start to play with the customizational side of Integration Designer and RTI, and how to really take hold of that and use it to your benefit to upsell yourself as a true custom installer. I also want to talk about some things in regards to swap out. Questions we get all the time are, well, what if I need to swap out a soundbar or a TV or a receiver? It's an IR control. Do I need to reassign all the commands and all of that kind of stuff? No, you don't. In fact, you didn't have to do it in the first place, but we're going to show you an easy way to swap out those IR devices very quickly. And two very important things that I want to make sure that we cover and you have a gross understanding of is how to update the firmware and check on that, and how to make sure that you know what is expected of you in the project file when you're uploading that. And again, it's a single room solution. It shouldn't take us too long to go through a lot of these things, but we'll take our time with it. We'll answer the questions. A couple of questions have come in. Do you have a list of who my contacts would be? I'm based in New Jersey. Yeah, actually, if you, and I can pull it up real quick, but in regards to the United States, if you go to, one moment here, let me just open up a quick window and throw it over here. If I go to RTI control, can you confirm you can see this window okay for me? Okay, well, I'm going to assume unless there's something in the chat that you can't see it. When you go onto the main page on RTI, if you scroll down to the bottom and you go to the US sales team here for any US based personnel, there's a list of all the contacts right there for you. So that'll give you an idea in terms of the US. In terms of EMEA or Europe, those are, you're going to run those through either Cyril or Clive, and we can get you that contact information. Or if you're in Australia, New Zealand, Asia Pacific region, that's going to be Greg Ravel or Luke, and they can make sure that I can make sure that you get those. So if you do need those contact information, please let me know. I'll be happy to get those to you. All right. As we continue to move on here, oh, there was another question about the Zigbee debug counter. Okay, that's a great question. Let me work on that, or let me answer that at the end if that's okay with you. All right. So let's get going here real quick. And if anybody, any of my panelists are on, then can answer these questions, that'd be great. So let's get into the programming right away and show you what we're talking about. All right. So let me open up the file that we've been working on here real quick, the single room programming. And once again, within Integration Designer, we pointed out a few different things. We showed you a whole bunch of other ways to do things yesterday, and how to, little things like growing and expanding the tree and being able to close down certain areas of it if you don't need it. and where, where you can make changes or adaptations to it and all that kind of fun stuff. But we started yesterday talking about tags, and we brought up the user interface and how much that plays into the considerations of the programming. And I'm actually going to stop my video here real quick to make sure we get so you guys can all see what I'm talking about here instead of having me on there. And one of the things that we pointed out, we kind of jumped around to some different ways of showing you yesterday, but a quick hint: if you're going to be going into checking out user interfaces on a device, one very simple way to do it is, it used to be that you would have to go to each individual device to check every page of that user interface. But one of the cool things that you can do within Integration Designer 11 is, say I want to go and check the RTI streaming music, the streaming music player, or even the Roku media player. That's another good example on the devices that I have in case there needs to be a change, or even the Sony Blu-ray player. Now, keep in mind that the iPad that we have here, as well as the T2X, are both going to have accessibility to the Sony Blu-ray player. But one way, if I needed to go and check out to make sure that user interface was accurate, I could go to that, each individual device, clicking on it, and then selecting the player or the page, and then looking at it in that fashion. But if I wanted to check it at that one source on all the devices, a very easy way to do it is to actually click on the source itself. When I click on the source, say the Sony Blu-ray page, you'll see that it has both the T2X and the family room there with the pages associated with the user interface here. So it's an easy way that if we needed to make an adjustment, or you needed to make an adjustment to maybe a command, like we were doing yesterday with the Netflix button and how we were showcasing what tags do here, and I wanted to make sure that was the same on the iPad. Well, instead of having to go back to the iPad now and remember exactly what I did here, I could click on the DVD Blu-ray and go, okay, yep, there it is, the app Netflix, we did that correct. So this is an easy way to navigate between source device pages that that'll make your life a lot easier. Even something like Roku as another example, where we can go in and we go, okay, that looks great. That looks great for that source. And you don't have to go through page by page or device by device. One other hint, and I mentioned this yesterday as well, is that anytime you're looking at a device, and I'm going to bring this down just a hair, especially one that has the auto rotation, and devices that have auto rotation are going to include anything that's a mobile-based device, phones, tablets, or even the KA8 or KA11 panels that can be horizontal or vertical. But an easy way, once again, to navigate these, because if you do make a change in one orientation, if auto rotation is enabled, you're going to need to make adjustments in both fashions. So hitting Control Q will give you the ability to quickly change that over. Okay. Now, another thing that you need to be aware of is when we're talking about a user interface such as the one here. Let me, you know what? I'll leave it at 50%. Well, let's blow it up to 75 a little bit here. Let's make it a little bit bigger here. In that, with these types of pages, we incorporate what are called layers. Layers allow us to have numerous buttons, images on top of each other. For example, this menu area here, without interfering with each other or needing to have additional programming. In fact, things like the layers here give us capability to not make mistakes. And what do I mean by that? Well, for example, if I said, okay, I want to make a change to this layer over here. Well, you notice that even with my select button tool selected at the bottom, I can't click on anything over here. Well, that's because on the right-hand side under the layers window, those lists have been locked. But you'll see that the volume layer is unlocked. So anything that's been made in the volume layer, I can actually click on and make adjustments to. Now, why do we do that? Well, the reason is because when you're dealing with a larger interface like this, or even a smaller interface for that matter, the last thing you want to do is make mistakes, right? So you want to put things in specific areas and lock them down so that as you're growing the interface or as you're adding different graphics or images, you're not interfering with the other ones that may need to be relevant there or present there. Case in point, if I were to go to the home page on, say, the iPad, and I've got this home page here where I have all these different layers available for me and all this different room. But if you look at all this, if I were to happen to go, oh, okay, let's just pretend that the weather layer was unlocked. And I said, you know what, I actually need to draw a button onto something or place an image onto something. I could go to the bitmaps and go, okay, I'm going to, instead of having this play button here, I want a different play button. Okay, so I type in the word play and find a play button. I'll just use this one as an example. And I want to go put it on here, right? Well, I could, with that layer unlocked, I could actually put it on that button, right? And that's not going to help me out very much. So I want to make sure that those layers are locked before I make any changes to any additional layers that are needed for those adjustments. The other thing I want to point out about layers is the structure and the ability to see them. If you hold the control button down and click on any of the locks or visibility eyes, you'll see that I can immediately, again, holding control button down, be able to take out visibility or add full visibility to all the layers. And same thing with the locks. You see how they lock and unlock. And I'm just holding the control button down on my keyboard to unlock and fully lock. So if you've got, say, these all, sorry about that, you know, you got a few different ones locked here and you're kind of like, oh my gosh, I don't want to go through and click all these. You can hold the control button down, unlock, lock them in, and then that one will remain the way it is. So again, holding control button down allows for that, which is a very helpful tool. The other thing I want to point out is that the order in which you see these layers is the order of priority. In other words, the ones that will be at the top of the list are going to be the closest ones to the screen, to the client. So if you had two layers and you wanted to make sure that the volume layer was always, no matter what other layers are there, always the one that's in front of them, you could move that up to the top and make sure that's always going to be front and center every single time. Or you could move it down to where you say, okay, that's in a good spot. So keep that in mind as you're developing these layers. The other part about layers is that you'll see on the now playing layer, this one right here, and if I unlock that, you can see I can click on this, but this is basically a filler area. Remember back when we were adding in the devices and I said, okay, let's add in a device for the iPad. And I'm just going to do this real quick and show you what I'm talking about here. And we said, okay, we're going to add the iPad in. And when we selected our list menus, we had the option of now playing, lights and climate, intercom security. Well, now playing refers to that now playing area here. If we were to have selected lights and climate, this area here would have been filled in with some climate control options and some lighting control options. Or same thing with intercom and security, maybe a security option here and some an intercom area here. So that's what that's referring to, is that just to give you a heads up in regards to the option list. I'm going to cancel that real quick. Now, we did a whole bunch of things within programming all these different drivers, and we said they created all these pages, but we noticed that most of this page is filled except for this. Well, something very unique has happened here. Let's click on the weather layer real quick. We'll just unlock that one real quick. And what I want to point out is by dragging up the button properties here real quick, I see that this area, this image here, this sun, has been assigned a feedback variable automatically as shown under the button properties variable for the tag called condition graphic, meaning that this will change with the current weather condition in that specific area that was specified in the weather driver. And the images are already built in. So if it's sunny, it'll be a sun. If it's raining, it'll be a rain, cloud with raindrops. But the point I'm trying to make is that this was already completed for us. But why wasn't the now playing? And do I need to go through and manually assign all of that? Well, no, you don't, because the page here, the layer here was already tagged with specific buttons. Check it out. If I click on play, it already has the tag play. If I clicked on the dynamic image, which would be cover art, as an example, it says now playing cover. It's been tagged with that already. So how do I get the relationship to happen? If you remember what Vincent said yesterday, when we're talking tags and auto programming, we're saying the tag has a name. And what we're doing is we're finding the relationship equivalent value with either a command or, in the case up here, of feedback. Well, what I can do with a layer like this that has something that's already pre-tagged is I can actually have the layer pull that data for me and populate that information, basically doing auto programming. So for example, the now playing layer, I say, okay, I want to see what's currently playing with my RTI streaming. So I'm going to go ahead and you can either right click on it, or excuse me, you can click on it and select layer properties as one way. So we go to layer properties with it selected. I see the layer properties name is on here. That's what's referencing here. I see the source being the global home. And I see the room using the default room. Well, room means just where it was originally created, right? Where we created this layer. But the source is where I can say, I want you to see if you can tie any of the data that has been created on this layer to any information. And in this case, I see that there's my RTI streaming music. So I want this layer to go and say, is there a relationship between the tagged buttons here and the RTI streaming music? And I bet you can guess what the answer is going to be. The answer is going to be yes. As soon as I press OK, you'll see that that information populates with all of the commands, the feedback options already done for us, because we had those tagged and the source and the layer pulled from the source and made that one-to-one connection. It's pretty cool, isn't it? The really neat thing about this, in all honesty, not in all honesty, but the really neat thing about layers is that you can create multiple layers and on a singular screen like this and have them pull that data so that you can see what's going on in those specific areas. The best way to describe it is if you wanted to see all the lighting loads for the entire house, well, you could have one page with a few different lighting layers here, and each layer is going to have maybe the gauge or an on and off button or something like that, and you could have those tags be the same, but they're going to be pulling that information and populate it onto here. So you won't have to reinvent the wheel. You don't have to put a lighting page, drag and drop the commands on here or tag them all. You could take essentially that same image and put the layer and say, I want you to pull the data from this source, and boom, it would populate for you. It's very cool stuff because of the tag relationship and because of the and because layers can be pulled. Now, the other cool thing about layers is that you can share them amongst a device. You'll see the word shared along all these different layers. So what does that mean? Well, what I want to point out here is that all the ones with shared, as I go through these different pages, check them out. They don't change. They're all the same on every page, which means that all I need to do is create this layer once and then share it amongst all the pages on the device, and it will be there. It's almost like creating for lack of a better term, a punch-through key, but in terms of imagery. So what does that look like? Let's do an example of this. Okay, so what if I wanted to create a shared layer? Well, there's a couple of things we can do. I want to draw a button on here. Let's go ahead and draw a button on the home page. Okay, and I'm going to do it based on the volume layer. So I'm going to unlock the volume layer here. And no, you know what? In fact, I'm going to create a completely new layer. Let's lock those down. I'm going to lock them all down here, and I'm going to create a new layer. Let's create a new layer. Let's add a blank layer. So I'm on my iPad on the home page, and I'm going to add a new layer. I'm going to title this layer System Muted. System Muted. The idea behind this is I want a big image that's going to pop up and show me that the system is currently in a mute state. Okay, so I need to create the layer first. So I'm creating the layer. The source I'm actually going to pull information from is going to be the Yamaha ADR. The room is going to be global. That's fine. We can use default room too. It's up to you, but whatever the way you want to do it is. And then I'm going to select shared. I press OK, and now I've got a blank layer. Okay, so now I want to draw a button on here. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to make sure all these other ones are locked so that I can't draw the button on any of them. Where I draw the button is going to be on this system muted layer. So let's go down to our pencil in the bottom left-hand corner. Let's go ahead and select the rectangular button. And I'm going to just draw this button right in the middle like this. Make it as attractive as possible. Big old button like that. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to right-click. I'm going to add some text into it. So edit text. System, I'm going to do all caps. System is muted. And then I could select a different font if I'd like. I'm going to make this pretty big, so I'm going to try 42. Let's see how that looks. Press OK. System is muted. All right, that looks all right. But you know, white's overdone. Let's change the color on this real quick. So I'm going to select, with it selected, go down to my word normal. And with the word normal, there is what's called text color. I select text color, and I can change that text color to say yellow. And now that button is going to have a text color of yellow. What if I wanted a different color of background? Instead of a black background, I wanted it to be a different color. Well, again, to the word normal, I'm going to select fill color. I select fill color, and let's choose purple. All right, so now our system is muted. Pretty straightforward approach here. Okay, now two things need to happen here. One, I look at this and I go, okay, great. System is muted, but as it stands right now, this layer is on top of everything else, right? This will always be up here. So how do I get it off? Well, I can actually enact what's called a variable or a feedback option so that when my system sees that the Yamaha receiver is muted, when somebody presses the mute button, this pops up. I'm going to have the layer become visible when mute is enacted. So how do I do that? Well, I've got my button here. I'm going to go back to my select tool button just in case. With my layer button selected, I'm going to select the layer properties once again, and here's where this visible comes from. With this visibility, I'm going to select the ellipsis. And in here, you'll see that I can choose the variable for which to pull that information from. In other words, I want my system to say, okay, when I see that the Yamaha ADR is muted, I want this button to appear. But when it's not, I want it to disappear. So I need to find the driver that can do that. Well, in this case, we used a Yamaha ADR Avitage driver. So I'm going to drop this down and select Yamaha Avitage Media Room from my driver list. And then under the variable for main, I see mute. Perfect. That's exactly what I do because I want to know when the receiver is muted. You can see there's a whole bunch of other variables in here that you can utilize in these types of options. But in our case, I'm just going to use the mute one. This is as straightforward as we can get. So I selected the driver, Yamaha, I selected mute, I press OK, and now this button here will only be visible when the client presses the mute button here. I press OK, it's been check marked, and we're in good shape. But what if I go to the weather page? Well, check it out. Where's that muted thing? Remember, volume is always going to be there. So how do I get that shared layer on here now? Because I want it on all the pages for this device. Well, it's easy as this, folks. We go back over to the layers on this weather page here. I'm going to select insert a shared layer. I'm going to find my shared layer, which is going to be excuse me, the system muted layer, and I'm going to insert it on all pages. As soon as I do that and close it, you'll see that it's now added it to the top, and which is good because I want this to show over everything so that they know. You may want it to, if I were to bring it back to say, okay, I want it to be behind, I want weather to be up front no matter what, you can see how it goes now behind that. That's not what I want here. So I'm going to drop that way back down. So now this button that I created will be able to be seen on all of the pages when the system is muted. When the system is not muted, it goes away because the visibility variable, because the driver is saying, hey, the client has turned off the mute, it's no longer there, it automatically will disappear for us. Pretty cool, if you ask me. So we talked about being able to utilize those types of options in here. And you may say, okay, well, I wanted this bigger, smaller, shorter, taller, fatter, wider. Yeah, you can absolutely change all that. I mean, you can go in here, select it. You got to select your layer, make changes to it, all that kind of stuff. And because it's in that, you'll see that it affects it on all those pages, right? I can make it, I could make it bigger. I could align it to the center of the page itself using align-based tools. But it's a very powerful tool to have with these layers. All right, so let's take this a step forward, even further now. Let's say that we want, let me take this giant button out of the way here. Let's say, and let's go to the Roku media page for fun here. Turn off the system muted here. And I go, okay, I want the logos for these. I don't, maybe I want a different logo for Netflix. I want the red logo for this. How do I change that? Well, you have two options. If you like the way this looks, this logo, which is a standard logo for Netflix, you could actually go down to the normal at the bottom with that button selected and make sure if you can't click on it, that you find the layer and unlock it that's necessary. And then you could select the icon overlay color to say being red. Or even Prime Video, we could say, oh, we want that to be, blue. That's not very good. Let's lighten that up a bit. There we go. Or even Disney Plus, maybe that's going to be yellow. Or Hulu is going to be green. You can change those colors as you see fit. And that's just the icon overlay color. But what if I actually wanted a Disney or a Netflix, another type of Netflix logo on there? Maybe a one that I find, or maybe one that I bought from, somebody on the forums. Well, once you start looking for these things, check it out. Netflix. You've got all sorts of them in here. I could actually take this image here, place it on that button, and boom. Now you might need to change the icon overlay color on this because, as you can see, oh, sorry about that, wrong one. Control Z. There we go. We'll change that to transparent. So there's my Netflix image, or I could change it back to this guy, or I could change it back to white. And you can see that you have the option of changing those very quickly. In fact, I could even make this button a little smaller and the image goes smaller, or I can go bigger up until the image sizing. In fact, we can take this even another step forward. What about the background on this? What if I look at this, I go, oh, the background's just, it's not conducive to what I want on this particular page. Maybe I want something a little bit more fun. Or maybe the client said, can you make the home pages a little more fun? Let's go to the home page on the iPad real quick. So I'm going to click on the home and then the iPad. Let's turn that off. And I want this home page to maybe have a little bit different of a background. Well, here's something cool. On the right-hand side under bitmaps, once again, let's clear out our search. And I can drop this search library down and find coral backgrounds. I select coral backgrounds, and what you'll see is a whole bunch of backgrounds that have been pre-created just for this sized image. And that's done because we have this filter enacted. If I were to turn this filter off, you'll see that now I've got a whole bunch and a whole bunch of different sizings. But if I want them specific for this one, so I don't have to whittle through all these different background images, I click on the filter and there we go. All right, so we look at this and I go, all right, this looks good. Let's find one that we like. How about this one? Let's try this Mystic Gray. I'm going to drag that and just pop it on over. Where is my? Why aren't you popping over? Silly thing. Oh, I know why. Helps if I unlock it. So I had the home layer locked, and I forgot to unlock it before I made a change. But there's my background. Or maybe I want to try that one, or even that one. Which one looks best to me and my client? You know, what's going to give them the good feeling that, you know what, this has been customized to me. In fact, you could even take it a full step forward and say, you know what, I really want to use a personal image like this one on there. Well, you can see that doesn't play out real well because that's not actually a background image. That's just a button, or that's just an image itself. That's not designated as a background image. So that doesn't work in this case. But any sort of background image that I want to use, I certainly could. All right, but what if we say, well, we really just want a color as our background image? We don't want a specific image. We just want a color. It's a corporate client and they want their custom color. Well, that's a pretty easy fix for us. What I can do is I can actually right-click on the name of the page and go to Page Properties. And under Page Properties, you'll see that we have default background or custom background. Well, a custom background now gives us the ability to put a background color in by selecting this button here and selecting from the basic colors, or I can define a custom color based on, you know, choosing it here or putting in the actual Pantone numbers into here. You know, if you're working with a corporate client, they are going to want to have their specific corporate color on there. So maybe something like this purple, which is pretty close for the RTI purple, as an example, has the specific colors. Well, clients are going to want that. So I could say, yeah, you know what? I want that purple. I'm going to press OK. And that will be my background color with no image on top. So I say, OK, that works out. Let's put it on. OK. And now I've got that color. What if I say, well, you know, that's pretty good, but what if I want to add a logo to it? Or what if I want to, you know, have it be a white background with just the corporate color? Well, again, we go into right-click on the page, go to Page Properties, and maybe I want to just say, you know what, I don't want anything. It's going to be white, okay? But then I want to add an image. Let's find an image. Press plus. Let's go to my desktop here and find a picture that will work out for us here. Picture, and I'll find RTI. Oh, let's just use this one for fun. I press OK. I want it centered. Boom. Oh, that looks terrible, but let's, that is a terrible example. But you get the idea, is that it, with the background color as that, that it would pull over. Let me change that image to something a little bit different here. Or here, let's do this. We do OK. We'll put this as the background image itself. I'm going to stretch this out, and it's not even going to be an image. But I could do something like that. Very simple. Or once again, just drag and drop this over. So there's different ways to be able to select these. The one thing you do want to keep in mind is that with this filter, it's going to filter it for the different screen sizes. If I wanted to make a change for, you know, dragging and dropping them over, no problem. I mean, it's easy as that for that filtered size. If I go to the T2X and say, okay, I'm going to go to the homepage on the T2X, and I really like this one. I want that on all of the pages. Well, the good news is it's already been done for us. I don't need to drag it onto all of them. So I certainly could, you know, make sure that that happens on all of them. But what if I said, well, I just want to change it to 1 on that page. So I go into my page properties and I want to use a custom background here. Well, if I select custom background and press OK, it's going to be blank. But I could then put this logo or this background on there and still have the other ones be that same type. So if you wanted to, again, have a custom background for one page, you select that page properties, go to use custom background. It can be white, and then you just drag over what you want or put in a specific image or picture here. If you want to, excuse me, if you create this custom image, or if you want to use a default image and put a specific image on here and make it for all pages, you certainly could do that as well. But in this case, it's a pretty easy way to just drag and drop those on. So you can see the benefits of all of this kind of fun stuff and being able to kind of play with some of the backgrounds, some of the images as well. If I have something like client images, for example, and they want this as their background, or as a background, or even the family photo as a background, you certainly could do something like that. Okay. So keep that in mind as you go through and as you are starting to play with some of the customization on here. And we have a lot more information in regards to creating customized areas. In fact, there is a whole section in the RTI forum that all they do and talk about is custom graphics. And there's people on there that create full suites of them. For example, there's one that's called Blackman Custom Design, and Noel creates these immaculate custom templates that you can purchase and have a full suite of templates available for you that you can place in Integration Designer and use time and time again. So you certainly have the ability to place those in. A couple of questions have come in here. Let me real quick. Gert, I'll talk about the Zigbee thing in a little bit. I can see when to find. Okay, that's good. David, is the locked option within layer properties the same as the locked option within layers window? No. So basically it's the difference between those on here is under the properties. When you do lock that layer, essentially you're saying this is, you're locking in these changes here, so that if you don't, if you wanted to make changes or you tried to do something on here and you wanted to affect all of the areas, you would unlock it first. As you can see. Oh, you know what? I backtrack on that. I apologize. Yes, it is. I'm sorry. Yes, it is locked and unlocked. So if you're trying to do a layer and try and do something different, you'll see that it's locked here. Press OK. It will lock it there. I apologize. Yes, I don't know where my brain went on that one. Oh, good. I saw that the other one was answered already. Oh, so photos of the kids. I saw that one come up here. Yeah, let me show you that real quick. We need to move on to a couple other things, but I'll show you for fun real quick here. So if I had this home and I wanted to add that in as a background, no problem. I've already created it as a client background image. There we go. There's a way to do that. And even further, if it didn't look right, I could right click, go into the page properties of it, and I could stretch that out and fill the page if I need to. This is one of my favorite ones. This one looks really good. Page properties, stretch it out. Client wanted, this is a picture that a client wanted. So, and what you can see is that it's defaulted to just that home page being that image. So it's pretty cool stuff that you can do here. All right. So with the customization, just a couple of keys for you. If you want to make changes or you want to create your own buttons, like we said on like the Roku, and you wanted to maybe put a Disney icon on here instead of having it be this one itself, make sure to select the layer for which it's on. If you're clicking around and you can't get it, it won't select for whatever reason, right? You can't select anything for whatever reason. You maybe need to select that layer and then unlock it, and then you can make said changes if necessary. And again, if I wanted to, I could say Disney, and there's Disney Plus or Disney Channel. I could throw that on there. That doesn't make a lot of sense, but you get the idea, Disney Plus. Okay, so just keep that in mind. You can draw your own buttons like we did with the system muted. You can, in certain devices, you can have a variety of shapes. In some like iOS, RTI panel, iOS, Android devices, you're going to be limited on shape size. And there's other ways that you can put in additional items or buttons as well. Just because I could only draw a squared off button doesn't mean that I couldn't do, say, a circle button. I can certainly drag and drop and put a circle button into here if I so desired. Okay. All right. So we've talked a lot about, okay, the ability for us to have these devices in and make some adjustments is all fun and looks great. And we talked about the layers and putting that in. But what if the client comes to us and says, hey, by the way, we really like what we're seeing so far, but we really like to add in our phone into the mix, or maybe even another, handheld controller, or something along those lines. Let's go with another phone as an example, and let's just say it's going to be an iPhone, just to make things easy on ourselves. So, do I need to go through the entire process again and make all those changes? No, we made this so easy for you. All you need to do, if you're going to add another controller in, is select Add Workspace Item. Select the controller and decide, just like we did before, is it going into a specific room or is it going into the global area? Well, if it's a phone, in this case, I'm going to just select the RTI panel iPhone and select global. I hit next, and you'll see that there's my page template, Coral, my list menus. In fact, you know what? I'm going to do my button menu now plain, just so you can see the difference between the two. And you'll see on the right-hand side, if you remember when we first added it, we only had home and weather. But now we have all these other pages that are available to us. Even the ones that we said originally we didn't need pages for, it's saying, hey, you're adding a new device. Are you sure you don't want to add these in? So for example, we didn't add a Yamaha page originally, and we didn't add a Samsung TV page, but the rest of them we did. So we want pages for all of those. And then this is going to be Junior's phone. And we'll go ahead and select Add Device. And as soon as I do that, Integration Designer kicks in, it creates the pages, it assigns all the commands. And in fact, one even higher benefit thing is that the iPhone itself, as you can see, has all the pages, but it also has the ability, as you can see, let me go Control Q, it's a little easier, to tag all of those individual buttons, right? But it's also going to have the ability for us to access the individual commands. So if I go to, say, my room menu, and here's the difference between these types of this is a button-based menu, whereas the iPad, this was the home for this, you'll see there's no button-based menu because it's all listed in this list area here. So again, Junior's phone, the home page says, okay, you press this button or this button here, I'm going to immediately, let me go to unlock these real quick. I'm just going to unlock them all. You see that it goes to a page link for the main menu buttons. I go to main menu buttons and it comes up with these. Please select a device. We'll check it out. Here's my home. It will go back to my home page. That's the page link, right? If I go to Apple TV as an example, it goes room, media room, and I'll check it out. It's pinging, or it is already put in the command for it, the macro for it to immediately go to the select activity for the media room for the Roku. So that means it's basically created a button for me to press it and watch TV or watch Roku. Now, here's where I say this is a little different than the list menu, because I need to customize this, right? I do, because I need to be able to, my client needs to see, oh, what is this, right? I'm not going to change the command. The activity is right here, media player, simple, it's the media room, Roku media player. Well, that activity, if we go back to the media room real quick and our activities, the Roku player was watch Roku. So on Junior's phone, just go to home here. Oh, not home, sorry. Junior's phone, under the Apple TV, it's that media room for the Roku media room. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to just type in the word Roku. There's my Roku. I'm going to grab this image, place it right there, and it replaces the Apple. Then I'm going to right click on it, select edit text, delete this out, and put watch Roku. I press OK, and I'm done. There's my activity to watch Roku. Pretty sweet, huh? Streaming audio, check it out. It's the current room RTI music streaming player. Well, the current room is whatever room I selected it in. Okay, so the room name, wherever that might be, well, that's where you can select your room. And in this case, since it's not listed here, I would need to have a select room option. But you can see there's a little more customization involved in here. So streaming music, well, maybe I want it to say something a little different. I want it to say, listen to music, just like we had on that activity, because that is the activity. Current room, well, in this case, the media room, and we're going to RTI streaming music. So there's my music. And if I wanted a music logo on here, it's fine to you could throw that on there. Boom. Check that out. Or you could even use something like that. So you have the opportunity to create, this is where the button menu and the list menu are different, because in the list menu, you're not going to, you know, these will all be listed for you based on the activity that you put together in the media room. In the button menus, you need to create these. And some will be done for you and some won't. So you can see there's music server and listen to music. They're both doing essentially the same thing. So I don't need both, right? So I would change that to maybe something different. Or, you know, this might be my watch Blu-ray. Well, how would we get that on there? Well, easy. What we'll do first is activity, DVD, Blu-ray. What I'm going to do is I'm going to select media room. I'm going to add a macro. I'm going to select the, excuse me, the select activity, the media room, and was it Blu-ray? The media room, BD player media room, which is going to be my watch Blu-ray. And then all I need to do is right click, edit the text, watch. Oops, if I could spell, there we are, watch Blu-ray. Boom. I don't like that just plain disc, so I'm going to type in blue. And I can find the Blu-ray logo on there. Oops, sorry about that. Throw that on there, it sizes it for me. Or if I want the actual disc itself, I could find maybe, going too fast here for my own good. You can throw the disc on there, it'll size it. I like the other one better. There we go. And in fact, I could even make that blue if I wanted to. There's watch Blu-ray. Boom, done just like that. And again, keep in mind that the activity, DVD watch Blu-ray, that's just the tag for this button here to initiate whatever I put on here. Okay, and what that tag is going to do now is that if I have that tag somewhere else, say on another button menu and another device, and I put activity, DVD, Blu-ray, this would be an option for me. It would be there as well. Pretty slick, huh? So really what we've done here is we've been able to add additional devices very simply into the process and only had to make a few adjustments. We see that the home, oh, there's that now playing. Let's just reassign that to the RTI streaming music. Press OK, populates that. Good, we're done with that. Roku's done, all that kind of fun stuff. The majority of it's done. We go to the DVD Blu-ray page. You might need to make some adjustments here on the viewports. Again, there's a whole training on RTI panel and viewports and what that looks like. But a viewport is basically the ability for us to have multiple buttons without layers. So you can swipe from right to left and left to right. So for example, if I go right click, edit viewport, this is the first frame or the first image that the client sees. If they swipe from right to left, it goes to this. And what you'll see here, okay, remember that system button that we talked about yesterday? Well, we might maybe need to adjust that to the app Netflix button. So let's change that, app : Netflix, like we did on the other ones. Hit enter. And we'll create that source. We'll add the command in real quick here. Why didn't populate that command? That's interesting. And Sony Blu-ray, and then app Netflix. Boom, done. So it's tagged, it's ready to go. We right click, edit text, type Netflix, and we press OK. But it's imperative that we check on these things. So again, when you get a viewport, if you want to edit it, you right click, edit the viewport, and it'll show you. Okay. And that's going to be the case in both portrait and landscape. Okay. Let's check questions here real quick. Did that tag change when you change the activity? So I assume you're referring to this one. So yeah, when the tag itself is tagged as activity DVD Blu-ray, this one's activity media player simple. You'll notice that these are two different ones. So it's music server media player or music player, whereas this one is the same one here, music player as well. It's just two different buttons that are the same thing. So we might need to change the tag on this one to something different. Now, keep in mind, if you change this command on here to something, it's going to affect both buttons. But if I change the tag name, it would affect just that one, or any of the others that have that same tag name that you're changing it to. Do you have to create activities in rooms with controller and list menus before those activities can be added to controller? No, not at all. No. Keep in mind that what you'll want to do, like the process, like we talked about before, is you'll want to add the processor, you'll want to add the RTI controllers that you need, you'll want to add all the sources, you configure everything, then you build the activities. Then you go into the user interface and you check out if it's a list menu, it'll be done for you. If it's a button menu, then you may need to go in and do the adjustments that we're talking about here. Okay. All right, so we're getting pretty close to being done. We call our client and they say, by the way, bad news, the Sony Blu-ray player that we have and have had for so long and it's been working great, broke. And we bought a new one. Forgot to talk to you about it first. Sorry about that, but we bought a new one. Can you use it? And we said, well, what is it? And they say, it's this, I don't know, Samsung Blu-ray player or a Denon Blu-ray player, whatever. Right. And we go, yeah, you know what? I bet we could use that. So how do we go about that? We look at this and we go, okay, we've got how many pages? We've got 3 different pages, all for this DVD Blu-ray page, right? With all these different commands. And we've created the activities already that it's being accessed by all these devices. Do I need to go in and do all those changes? No, we can just swap the device and be done with it, actually. So what I'm going to do is with that Sony Blu-ray player selected, I'm going to go up to the replace source. And with the replace source, I'm going to affect all the things that have used this. So the first thing I see is, okay, it's an IR source, so it's going to replace it. So what do I want to replace it with? Let's just use we'll just use Denon Blu-ray, just for the sake of, because I said it first. So there's Denon Blue. So again, I selected the Sony BD player. I went up to replace source. I typed in Denon BL and it skimmed that IR code down. I look at the codes and go, yeah, that's a pretty good code set here, especially since I have discretes, thank goodness. And I'm going to hit next. As soon as I do so, it's going to give me this list. What this list is this is all that's currently on the page, the Sony Blu-ray player codes. The ones on the right are what will be replaced with the Denon codes. And do they match up 1-to-1, 1-to-1? For the most part, they do. There's a couple in here that don't. For example, menu options doesn't. There's not a menu options command in here. So is there anything close? Well, before we do that, we look and we go, is there anything for options already used? Okay, probably not. Let's see if options is even there. No, it doesn't look like it is. So we might just need to change this altogether. We might not use a menu options. Maybe we use what it looks like. We've got top menu, pop-up menu, main menu. Let's see if there's a different type of menu we can use. Why don't we do setup menu? So in here, I'm going to use setup menu for menu options. Now you might need to notate that, take a picture of it, write it down, say swapped menu setup for menu options, because you may have to go into the user interface and change the text, but the command is automatically going to be changed. Power toggle, we're not even going to touch that one because we've got power on and power off discrete. So I'm going to leave that alone. And then I'm going to name this very similar to what I would name the Sony one, just for the sake of organization. Player, media, room. And I replace the source. As soon as I do so, go to my Blu-ray on the T2X, check it out. Not only have the codes switched, there's my Denon Blu-ray, right? Pop-up menu pop-up, Denon Blu-ray, Netflix. Hey, that still works. Perfect. Options. Oh, there's not an options one. What did we say that one was going to be? That was going to be the menu, right? The menu options. Looks like it should be. So I don't know why that didn't come over. Display is display. Okay, perfect. So that one looks pretty good. We've got our open and close. But what about the activities? Well, let's go to the media room and select our watch Blu-ray. And what you'll notice here, power on source, been changed to the dead on Blu-ray. The activity selected, done. It's going to go to the dead on Blu-ray player, calling player. So even the power off source, there's the power off command. How about something along the lines of the IR routing on this guy, right? Do we need to worry about that? Well, no, because we just replaced it. So if I go to the IR properties, check it out. It's still going out of port 2 on that processor. So to reduce any confusion, you may want to go and retitle this, but that's kind of up to you. If you did want to retitle it, you could certainly go to the main processor, go to properties, go to port names, and name this just maybe Denon, BD Media. And there we go. And now you'll see that it's been changed. All right. Well, then we're working on this and we go, oh, this is, this all looks great. Everything seems, we've got Junior's phone working. We've got the iPad, all the devices, all of the information seems to work pretty well. But what about this? What about, areas where I don't necessarily need a button? Can I just delete those? Well, yeah. You want to make this as clean as possible for your client. So the first thing you'll want to do is take a button like this and go, do I have any lights in here? No, I don't want the client thinking that we do, or, maybe you want to plant the seed, but in this case, I might just delete that button. And then maybe I'll want to center this, or maybe even put in a little power button on here. Let's do that instead. So let's go to our bitmaps. I'm going to type in the word power and find a power button. Well, that's huge. Let's bring that sucker down a little bit. There we go. Oh, you look so much better. There we go. Bring it down even a little bit more. Boom. And in fact, you know what? I look at these two buttons and I go, I want to make sure they're totally centered up. So I could either just do it with this one button based on the page using this up here, center it horizontally, and it's in the center. Or I could center it to this button itself by selecting both of them and by dragging my cursor across both. Again, holding left click, dragging across both to select them. And then the one with the red corners is called my anchor. The one with the white corners will follow the anchor. So if I said I want this button to be aligned to the left of this button, well, here's my align left. Boom. If I want to do it to the right, boom. If I want to do centered up, boom. And then I could say, you know what, these two look, I want to make sure that these two as a group are centered on here. Well, with them both selected, let's center it vertically. Boom. There we go. That looks a lot better. Turn off AV. Instead of having a button that doesn't do anything, it says turn off AV right there. Perfect. So there's little things like that that will take just a hair of a time to make your client have an even better experience. Okay. All right. So a couple of quick things before we, as we continue to move on here, with all of these different types of processes and all these different things, please don't think that we want to make sure that you have the knowledge that will get you going and get you started with this. And what I would encourage you to do is to continue that knowledge on RTI Excel. There's two quick things that I want to cover real quick before we open up to some additional questions here. But the first thing is, with Integration Designer 11 being the newer software, you want to make sure that you have the latest firmware on all of your devices, okay, before you start uploading the program file. Okay, don't get to the point where you're like, well, why won't it upload? Because the first question tech support will ask is, well, what firmware do you have on your processor, on your RTI devices, etc. So the iPad and iOS and Android devices apps, you don't have to worry about those. We update those on the app side of things. But with the T2X, for example, if I want, or even the XP3, if it's on my current network right now, and I want to see what the firmware is on it, I could select it, go to Communications, and select Show Devices on Local Network. And it will show me all the devices that are currently, all the RTI devices that are currently on the network, same as my computer. And under the column version, it will tell you the version number. If this number is in red, that means that there is a new firmware version available. If you want to directly download it, you click on that download button, and it'll say, okay, here's all the supports it does. Download the latest firmware version. You click on it, it will download the zip file directly to your computer. And you'll want to unzip the file and then follow the instructions on how to do it. Okay, it won't just populate it on automatically, but it'll download the file for you. So that's a very easy way to be able to get the firmware version updated for any devices that are on the network. And that can include things like the KX4 as an example, which is on the network, or the KA11, or even a remote that might be on here, like a T4X. Now you'll see that the T2i is not on here. Well, that's because it's not currently connected to the network. Okay, so keep that in mind as you go through. The other thing that we need to do, and let me backtrack. If you do need to connect a device via USB to get it, like a remote, because you haven't uploaded it to the process yet, or to the processor, you'll connect it via USB, put it in the dock and connect via USB, and then be able to pull that information in. If you give me 1 second here, let me grab my T2X that I have. There we are. And I'm just going to plug it in just to show you how this works real quick. It's a pretty straightforward approach, to be honest with you. But the cool part about this is that it's fast. I mean, we really don't mess around too much with this because we got to get you in and out of those jobs. So with the T2X, I can plug it in via USB. Excuse me. Go up to my communications tab, select Get USB Firmware Version, and there it is. Now, how do I know this is the latest version? Well, I need to go to RTI Control real quick here. Okay, you'll log in, and then we'll go to our firmware under the resources section. And in the firmware, and if you go down to wireless interfaces, which is going to be our T2X, you'll see that the latest version is 22.3.31, same as what I currently have on here. So I am in good shape. But if I needed to, if it wasn't that way, then we would just download the latest version and follow the instructions on how to update it. Okay. So once you've updated your firmware on processor and the T2X, then we can start uploading the program file to it. Now, when you're ready to upload the program file, there is an autosave that will kick in here automatically. But I mentioned something earlier that you may want to do a version of this. So if you did want to do a version of this program, so that if you do have something that happens down the road and you need to, go back a step or whatever that reason may be, if I go to File, Save System As, I can then save this as a specific version, say version 002 as an example, and press Save. So now I have two versions of it, and I can put those versions in the client's folder and all that kind of fun stuff. But when you're ready to upload it, because on the XP3, we said that we were going to allow it in the processor properties here under network to allow the device to be programmed over the network. If I go ahead and select Send File, you'll see that it's going to come up. It's going to calculate all the changes needed and which devices currently need updating. And in this case, you see that there's the XP3. And I said we can do it via USB, or I can do it on the network. So if I click on the USB, there it is. I can press select it, press selected device, and send that file. And it will send that file over. The T2X, well, once it's on the network, I'll be able to do that. But since it's not on the network, I still have to do it via USB. So once that's done, I can select, because it's USB, you'll see that it's not on here right now for the network, but USB, I can just hit the send button. It's going to send it right over, and I'm done. Now, what about the iOS devices? Well, the iOS devices are fairly, let me give you a little background. Nothing lives on the iOS. We have an app, but all the things that we put onto this iPad here with all the images, all the check marks, all the commands, everything that's on here doesn't actually live on the iPad. It actually still lives on the processor. All that lives on the processor. The iPad is just basically the gateway for it. So when you go to send the file, it's going to say it's ready to go because you've updated the processor, right? But you still need to open up the app and go through the process of uploading that file. So it's a pretty straightforward one. You launch the app, you hit get started, you choose the processor, you choose the file, and you're rolling with it. And then here's the really cool part about this is that if you ever make changes to this iPad and that app is on and working, or on and functional, or even just the app is open, and you upload any changes to the processor, the next time that you open up that iOS or Android device, it will automatically download the next configuration to it. So you don't have to worry about, oh, is it updated or anything of that nature. Okay. And then, as I mentioned before, the cool part about this is that, once you have these uploaded and they're on the devices, it's going to populate all that information. It's going to work fantastic. You're going to love it. Let me give you a real kind of a fun way to do this. I'm going to create what's called a virtual panel, just so I can kind of show you what this is. A virtual panel is a free, it's a free controller that doesn't require a license. Every XP processor comes with one virtual panel license. This is a program that runs on the computer. It's an executable program. And most devices that have some sort of interface, a UI interface, a touchscreen interface, can be converted to a virtual panel device. If I need to do something like that, or I want to duplicate something, I can right-click on that device. Anytime you're going to convert it or change it to something, always duplicate it first. So I'm going to do T2X VP for virtual panel as an example and press OK. Now I've got two T2Xs. But I want to convert this. Well, if I go up with it selected to the word convert to, I can see that I can convert it to quite a few different things. The one thing I can't convert it to is a T4X. It's a little different of a structure of a device on here, but it doesn't allow that. But here's my virtual panel. If I select virtual panel, it's going to say, are you sure you want to do this? This is why we duplicated it first before we converted it, because if we hit yes, and then we go, oh man, I shouldn't have done that. Well, there's no guarantee you can actually go back to the previous version. So always duplicate before you convert something, aside from the processors. I press yes, and it's going to say any buttons on frames 2 through 10 will be removed. Are you sure you want to continue? That's another story down the line, but now I've got a virtual panel. Okay, and the virtual panel will just be the touchscreen interface. Now, if I go up to the send file, you'll see that the processor needs to be updated. So I hit the send. All right, there's one packet, and the second packet should be quick. Boom. And then the T2X virtual panel is a file. I hit send on that, and it's going to say, okay, what do you want to title this? Oh, this works, T2X. I'll put it on my desktop real quick. Hit save. It's executable. Do you want to run it? Yes, I do. And it opened up on my other screen here. 1 second while I pull it over. Boom. There's my virtual panel. Check it out. It says media room. There's my list menu here. Home, watch Roku, watch Blu-ray, listen to music, check weather. I hit check weather. Currently in Minneapolis, which it is right now, it's 28 degrees. Beautiful. If I hit listen to music, saying, okay, please wait. And it's going to go through and it's going to find the music. Oh, look at that. I can create my own, if I want to go to my Pink Floyd radio as an example. There we go. And it's playing. I can like it if I want. I can go back. I have quite a few options available here. And hit home, I can say, okay, you know what? I don't want to do that anymore. I want to watch Roku. And again, it would be everything would be connected, be sending the commands, and there's my Roku page. So the virtual panel is a nice way to be able to kind of check on some of your user interface and make sure that everything's working the way it should be. Again, you know, it is useful. It is one license per XP processor, free to you. Doesn't mean it necessarily has to be free to your client. And this is actually a very useful tool for IT admins or AV admins at companies, where you could create a big virtual panel that monitors everything going on in the system for the client and charge them a certain fee to design that thing, but it's not necessarily a license fee. That could be even over and above it if you wanted. Now that's free for local networking and using it on the same network as the computer that it's running, the same network that the processor is running on. But if you want to use it outside of that network, then you would need to actually buy a license to do that. So remote use of virtual panels, you do need a license for. And again, that can be bought same fashion as the RTI panel ones. All right. So we've covered quite a bit. And with all of this type of stuff that we've been working on, you know, we talked about the design aspect of things. We've talked about, you know, being able to swap devices. We talked about some unique ways to do some conversion of things. We also talked about layers. And just keep in mind with layers, you know, if you want to make a change, select a layer, unlock it, make sure they're visible. If you can always add a shared layer in as you could develop, or you can create new layers, the level at which they are relevant on that screen, front being the highest, you know, front of the screen, back of behind all the other layers being the bottom. You know, and take your time in developing this. Again, the cool thing about, you know, Integration Designer 11 is that we do a majority of this work for you. So all the time you would have spent originally designing each one of them, you know, creating them, dragging commands over, all that kind of stuff is out the door, man. You can spend your time designing something that's very unique for your client and really custom tailored to what their needs are. So please keep that in mind as you go through and develop these. So let's go ahead and answer a few questions that have come up here. I'm going to make sure that my speakers are on. All right. So I think we talked about the tag names already. Do you have activities in the room with the controller list menu? Oh, okay, we talked about that. Is it possible to create a please wait page with some kind of dynamic image? So that's a great question. The answer is yes, but we don't have it built into here. Could you do it and have people done it? Yes. I would check out the forums to see different examples on how, you know, what has been done or how it's been done. There are, I mean, there are ways to do it in Integration Designer where you have multiple layers or even multiple pages turning every, you know, half second or something like that. But that takes a lot of resource and a lot of processing power. There's a couple of drivers out there that I think do something like that, that don't take as much resource power in them. So I would check out the forum on that one. I don't know of one off the top of my head. I apologize, but the RTI forums, let me show you the RTI forum real quick. If you're not currently on the RTI forum, I highly recommend you get there. If you go onto the RTI control page and under support, there is RTI forum. You go to the RTI forum, you'll need to create an account for you, but mine comes up obviously automatically. But you'll see that there's all sorts of different things for you. Remember how I talked about custom graphics? Well, there's custom graphics. That's where you could go to say, okay, here's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for a please wait and do a search. Okay, there's please wait page on Apex, spinning wheel for please wait page. So somebody's tried to create something like this. So again, this is where I would go for any sort of specialized graphics that you're looking for that you don't know how to do yourself already. Plus, if you remember and recall how we talked about the drivers, well, you know, as much as I would love to say that we have a driver for every single product out there, it's just not the case. But there are third-party drivers available for you to be able to get whatever you're looking for. So if you go to the third-party driver index, you see that there's a whole slew of them on here that you can choose from and use. And again, Some of them might be free, some of them might not be free. It just depends on who wrote the driver. The one thing to note that any of the drivers on here, do not call RTI tech support for assistance on. You have to call the person, whoever wrote the driver, shoot them an email and say, hey, I can't figure out why this isn't working. They will be able to answer it because we don't have the code on how they did it. Another question, on a handheld controller, can an IR and RF system command be placed on the same button? Absolutely, it can. So it's kind of yes, absolutely it can. Let me bring up Integration Designer. What it would entail essentially would be that you would need to actually add in the IR devices in what's called a standalone mode and place them on a button that is also accessing an activity. That's one way to be able to do it, so that it can actually send out that signal direct line of sight and then access the activity for which the rest are going through, or even a singular button that is like we talked about with Junior's phone here, like the Watch Blu-ray. You could actually have a specific, you could add in, maybe not in here, it's not the best example, but because this is automatically a system macro, but what you could actually do is under the controller, instead of it being under here, you could have a specific command in this area being added in, and it would need to be in what's called a standalone mode. So you'd have to add in the IR device as a standalone device. And what that looks like is this real quick. Infrared, you go, I'll just grab this. And instead of it, excuse me, being output port, you select standalone. I won't add any pages. I add that device in real quick. And you'll see that now that 3M projector, the IR properties for it, it's standalone, which means that it essentially is going to be sent out by the device itself. So if I wanted to, I could add in, let's just hypothetically say, command in here. I could add a second command in, and what you'll notice here is that it says it's not going to be listed in here. But if I go to controller, am I on C2X, right? Yeah, controller. That's not letting me add it for some reason. Oh, I know why, because I'm in that one. I put it in global by accident. So let me go to the RTI streaming music here. T2X. All right. So on this one, for example, I go to controller, standalone, and then I could add that specific command in for the projector or whatever command it might be. And then I would also need to add in the activity, select the activity for whatever it might be, or whatever additional commands I might need to run on the processor, media room, RTI streaming music. Okay, a little bit more of a complicated process, but doable. All right, on the music page, I'd like to have composers show up in addition to album and artist. Okay, so yeah, so without getting too much into what that would look like, let's see here. Now playing artist. So you want a separate one, or you want it in line with this one? If you want a separate one altogether, what I could do is I could actually just copy this and paste it and create a new one, as I did here. Oh, sorry about that. This one, and I could edit that text, or excuse me, not edit the text. I could change the variable on this to composer, if that's an option on here. I would have to look now. Playing album, artist, track, station, score, genre, path. Yeah, it would just depend on what's available in here. Music. And you could create a second one. But again, it depends on what we are limited, unfortunately, by what the device can give us. So if there's only a certain amount of things that can be put on here, or a certain amount of, if there's only certain feedback options available for us to be put on, that's what we're limited to, unfortunately. I can't just say, oh, you now send me this and there it is. But yeah, I mean, as long as it's available, you certainly can do that. I'm trying to program a U3 remote for an outdoor TV. I plan using the one room scenario. Can you go through very basically how programming would come over to a U3, or should I contact? Frank, that's a little bit more in depth. It's a great question, and I would love to go into it, but it's a little bit more than a 4-minute conversation. So what I would say is this. There's two things. One, yes, of course, I'm happy to help you, or two, or Vincent, we're all happy to help in any way we can. But the other thing that you can do is if you go to the technical support documents under support and you go to technical bulletins, there should be one in here for programming the U3, if I'm not mistaken, that will walk you through the steps on it. KX3, where's the U3? Controllers, audio, video. Where's the U3? There's the charts. One on here. MS3. I thought there was one on here, but I don't see it. Okay, that's interesting. So let's go to the products real quick and the remote controls. I believe it's on the product page 2. Marketing resources, opt guide. Man, I thought this was all on here. I apologize. I thought we had the video on here with it, but I don't see it. So shoot me a note, Frank, if you would, or you training at rticontrol.com. I can kind of walk you through it if you'd like to see it live. It doesn't take, it's not incredibly strenuous, but it is different from other controllers, namely because one, it requires the ZB Pro Zigbee programming tool to actually download the file to it, and two, this select button trips up a lot of people on here. So I'm happy to walk you through that. I know there's training material on it. I just don't know where it went. So I'm going to find it and put it back on the page. All right. Is it possible to create? Oh yeah, we talked about that. Will there be Pro Control replacement for the 24Z? You know, I know we're setting the Pro Control 24Z right now. My recommendation is that you go to XP3 and start utilizing that one. I don't know, yes or no, 100% if we're doing a full-on replacement for it or not, but my advice would be, to start doing XP3s on it. If you absolutely need the additional, I guess you got to kind of weigh what's important on there. Is it the ports, or is it the Zigbee built-in Zigbee antenna? If it's the ports, then I say start with an XP6 and do a ZM24 antenna if you need the additional ports. Otherwise, you can do an XP3 with expansion devices and utilize those. So, good question. Something else, will these trainings be accessible in the training area? So I'm going to record them. They are all recorded, excuse me. So I will send out a link. The training that we've kind of gone through today, or the last 3 days, is available on RTI Excel already under the new dealer authorization. I can show you what that looks like real quick if you're unfamiliar. Oh, I don't know why I went there.
Hey, Tyler, are you going to talk about that first question, the Zigbee debug counter?
Yeah, give me 1 second here. So if you go to RTI Excel, and then the new dealer authorization course, this one right here, that has completed already. That is a single room solution course that kind of goes through it. So similar to what we did a little bit more in depth and detail on a few things, but it does give you pretty much a pretty close knit option to viewing what we did here. But I will send everybody the link for it. And then I tried to install the Zigbee debug counter. The device driver is installed probably, but it is correct that there is no page yet for the T4X. I install the T2X and there is a page, and the page shows up. I can't convert T2X to It's not listed. There's a way to get it working on T4X. I'm using. So yeah, I mean, you know what you can. So what just to give everybody kind of an idea of what he's referring to is the Zigbee debug counter. The primary communication method between RTI controllers like a T2X, T4X, and the processors is through Zigbee, and Zigbee allows us to get two-way communication, sending the triggers to the processor to execute the commands, and then getting feedback, like we talked about with cover art and all that kind of stuff. The one thing that is recommended is that you do a test of the Zigbee range based on the location of the antenna. In the case of the XP3, it is built in. So you want to test it to make sure that you have full coverage on it. And apparently, or not apparently, but the Zigbee debug counter doesn't have a T4X in it, which I find interesting, but I'll have to change, we'll have to change that here. And under the technical documents here real quick, let me go to the Zigbee installation. So there's the Zigbee debug counter. This kind of shows you how it all works, what it does, what it works with. And then the Zigbee network test files here, test bundle for Apex file instructions. That's the one you want to use. Let me open this up real quick so that I can show you everybody what I'm referring to, and then we'll call it a day. What you could do is you could essentially, one second here, folks. I'm sorry, this window is. What you could do is you could copy and paste the same commands onto the remote that it has, or onto your T4X, and utilize that. I wonder if you could actually, let me think about something real quick. Let me duplicate this T2X real quick. I have a quick idea. I know you can't convert it, but I'm going to convert T3 real quick and see if I can maybe do that to a T4. I don't think you can, but yeah. So convert it to a T3X, then convert it to a T4X. There's your easy solution. I don't know why it's not listed in there, but there's your T4X. And now it's a T4X for you. So duplicate it, convert it to a T3X, then convert it again to a T4X. There's your answer. Perfect. I don't have to go through the whole process. All right. Oh, then ID11 crashed. So that's weird. I don't know about that then. I just did it and it worked for me. So I might try it on maybe on another file or something like that. But if you need to, you can always merge the page in to a blank file, you know, and then merge that page in and then do it on maybe a blank file. Maybe that's the file that's just not working right. So I'll look into it though for you, but I just did it here and it seemed to work just fine. So I would try that. Otherwise you can always add a T3X in and then copy and paste those feedback variables onto the T4X and load it in. So, but I would give that a shot. All right. Were there any other questions? Well, you know, once again, I just want to say thank you so much for your time. I know this is a lot of information to grasp, and I'm glad we were able to do it over a 3-day session. I think it gives you quite a good starting off point to being able to take that next level with RTI and Integration Designer 11 and the programming. And I hope you see how simple we've made it for you. And we want to make sure that you know that you're successful each and every time. So that being said, what I mentioned before was that, you know, we will be having, you know, you can still get a whole bunch of resources online from us. Oh, sorry about that. On the RTI Excel, you can send us emails and let us know what we're doing. I will send everybody who attended just a brief survey, if you wouldn't mind filling that out for us, so that you know, I can make this program even better for you. And as we continue to add more data or more content that it's relevant to what you need, and keep in touch with us. Let us know how we can help. So with that, thank you very much for your time, and good luck, everybody. Have fun, and we'll see you again soon. Take care. Bye-bye.